I'm Madison Timmons.
And I'm JT Timmons.
And we're the co-creators of the hit podcast, The Most Haunted City on Earth.
Look, we love ghosts, but we also love true crime. So we here at Haunted City Studios decided to create From One to Wicked.
A true crime podcast with a killer twist. We'll investigate,
discuss,
then rate
the most brutal and devious crimes and the monsters who commit them.
On a scale from 1 to wicked. So sit back and kill some time with us.
And remember, next time you're walking down the street,
you might just be passing a perfect wicked 10. Hello and welcome back to another episode of From One to Wicked. My name is Madison Timmons.
And I'm JT Timmons.
And today we are going to be discussing a very notorious killer that you may or may not have heard of. And that is going to be Israel Keyes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we're going to be rating Israel Keyes today on our scale of From One to Wicked. But before we get into that, we do have a few announcements for you. On January 1st, we have a very big announcement.
Massive.
That is going to be for both of our podcasts, The Most Haunted City on Earth and this one. So it's going to be affecting everything.
The biggest.
The biggest announcement.
The largest announcement.
Yeah, JT's very excited about this. So, yeah, it's definitely something that you're going to want to tune in for. And if you want probably a sneak peek, because I would say we're probably going to tell the Parajunkies first.
Yeah, we're definitely telling the Parajunkies probably the next week or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometime mid-December. And the Ultra Parajunkies will know first, and then we're going to tell everyone else.
And you're probably wondering, what is a parajunkie? Well, that is what we call our listeners who join us over on Patreon from our other podcast, The Most Haunted City on Earth. The reason why they're called parajunkies is because they are paranormal enthusiasts that are addicted to the to that content. But,
they on one.
But yeah, so also on Patreon, though, we are going to be creating a whole new sub chat for just From One to Wicked listeners, because there are people who are a part of the Patreon community who listen to both podcasts. Also, you who is listening at home right now might be wanting to join, but you're maybe not fully into the paranormal thing. So you'll have a whole section just to talk about true crime and events and things like that. Moida. And we'll do separate announcements for this podcast through that chat.
Yep.
But we do need suggestions in that chat for names to call y'all, because Parajunkies doesn't feel right.
Well, it's not right for...
It's not right for this.
Yeah.
So please, if you do join us over on Patreon, or if you're already a part of the Patreon community, give your suggestions down below in the Patreon chat, just so that we can kind of see what you guys want to be called, because the Parajunkies name themselves that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like that is the most appropriate way to go about naming a community, is let the community come up with their names. So
yeah, because there'll be that one name and everyone they gather around. They'll be like, oh, that's the one. That's so good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. And that's how Parajunkies began.
Exactly.
Cool.
So we're going to be coming up with a name for y'all as well. So that is all the announcements we have for today. And
let's get into this, sicko. So we watched the new season of Wild Crime on Hulu, and it's on this dude. It's all about this dude. And I was like, we have to do it From One to Wicked, because
he's pretty awful.
He is super awful. We've heard of him before, but he was never like surprisingly on our radar in any significant way.
I think because we didn't fully understand the extent of what he did, you know, because we had heard, when you consume true crime media as much as we do, it's really easy for things to just kind of fall to the wayside.
Yeah.
And
you get distracted by another crime and you're not paying attention to this, but you should. You should. It's crazy.
You absolutely should. It's crazy. Also, if you are new here, the way that we operate on this show is we are going to rate Israel Keyes or any criminal or crime that we are, talking about on the show. We're going to be breaking it down into 5 different categories, and that is brutality, premeditation, motive, difficulty of investigation, and body count.
Body count.
Yes. And so That will eventually give us our full total from us. And then y'all can also give us your rating in the comments if you're listening on Spotify or you are listening on YouTube. You can give us your comments as well. And you can break it down into that 5 categories, or you can just give us the overall total, whichever you prefer if you don't want to do math. But
heck yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into it.
all right.
Tell me what he did.
So, Israel Keyes, based on the investigation conducted by the FBI after his arrest in March 2012, is believed to have committed multiple kidnappings and murders across the United States between 2001 and March 2012. Keyes resided in Washington from 2001 to March 2007, after which he relocated to Alaska, which I'm like, were there a lot of serial killers in Alaska? He might
Yeah.
be the only. Really?
No, there's tons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's where Alaska is famously
I know
where
it's got-
criminals go to hide.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's got a pretty high crime rate in a lot of
Yeah.
areas, but I didn't know if it was a serial killer capita sort of thing. But
Yeah, there are other Alaskan. I can't think of any, but I'm sure there are.
there has to be.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm
and,
almost certain there are.
and living in that kind of brutal terrain, I can imagine it takes a very specific type of person if you're not from Alaska.
Yeah.
And so it's also, you're right, there's so many places that you can hide because they're,
Heck yeah.
it's so
if I'm trying to
rural.
hide, I'm going to Alaska.
Bruh.
Yeah, you got a bunch of them.
Okay.
Yeah, you got a bunch of them.
There you go.
Yup.
Well, he's just one of them then.
Alaska's long history of serial killers, crimereads.com.
Oh, man. All right, then.
All right.
So, while residing in Alaska, he traveled extensively while working as a general contractor. During a series of interviews with law enforcement, Keyes provided detailed accounts of his meticulous and organized planning and preparation for his crimes, showcasing a significant level of planning and preparation. Keyes admitted to robbing several banks during a specific time frame. Now, mind you, this is just the overview of everything we're going to talk about. We're just going to get to a deeper dive. So, he used to rob banks during this time period, with 2 of these robberies corroborated by investigators.
You don't hear about a lot of serial killers robbing banks.
Right?
Like, that's like,
It makes
he
a-
was an adrenaline junkie for sure.
Well, so here's the thing. It'll make more sense when we get into it of why he specifically was doing this, because it wasn't necessarily for the thrill.
Yeah.
It was more so like a part of the plan.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
yeah. And he used the proceeds from his bank robberies to finance his travels and other activities, including work as a general contractor. So Keyes also confessed to traveling to various locations to leave supplies he intended to use for future crimes. He mentioned burying caches through the United States, which the FBI recovered. 2 of these caches, one in Eagle River, Alaska, and another near Blake's Fall Reservoir in New York.
Caches are like just bags of money and stuff.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay.
We'll talk all about that. But yeah, these caches contained weapons and other items
okay.
used for body disposal. Keyes indicated that the remaining caches in the U.S. likely held weapons, money, and items used to dispose of victims.
Dang. So there could be a cache
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah.
That's wild, y'all.
And investigators believe Keyes was unaware of his victims before their abductions. He described several remote locations he frequented in search of victims, including parks, campgrounds, trailheads, cemeteries, boating areas, and more. He's also admitted to frequenting prostitutes during his travels, and it remains uncertain whether he met any of his victims in this manner. And Keyes mentioned that his victims were both male and female, and their ages range from late teens to the elderly. Prior to the murder of Bill and Lorraine Currier, which we'll talk all about their murder here a little bit later in Vermont, Keyes revealed that his victims' disappearances had received minimal or no media coverage, which is really interesting.
Super.
Yeah, he was very good at staying out of the public eye, which is really interesting as a serial killer, especially in, I mean, like,
He's going to rank high in premeditation.
yeah, he very high, very high. And investigators believe Keyes is responsible for 11 homicides, although he did not disclose all of the locations involved. Keyes described crossing into multiple states during the abduction, murder, and disposal of victims. And it is possible that in some cases he abducted a victim from one state, transported them to another state where they were murdered, and potentially drove the victim to a third state for body disposal.
He makes the investigation very difficult.
He does. He does.
He really, I mean, he's good at that.
He's very meticulous.
He's very meticulous.
Yeah. And additionally, Keyes admitted to burglarizing between 20 and 30 homes throughout the United States.
He reminds me a little of Ted Bundy because Ted Bundy did really brazen stuff while going, like he was organized and he would do insane stuff at the same time.
Right.
Like that is crazy to me. You know, like he would
100%.
jump out of a library and get out of custody. But he was so organized doing like everything.
The thing is I think he thought he was Ted Bundy, but
Yeah.
he's not. And
Yeah.
that's the issue for him.
Okay.
So, but yeah,
Want to be Ted Bundy?
he kind of is though.
Want a Bundy?
One a Bundy. But let's talk about Israel Keyes' childhood a little bit because it definitely gives you a good background into why he's like this to a degree. But Israel Keyes...
Was it filled with gumdrops? Huh? Was it filled with gumdrops and candy canes?
No. He was
His childhood wasn't filled with love and hugs?
No, it was filled with white supremacy.
Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. We'll get into that. It's not great. It's not well.
I'd rather have gumdrops.
You don't get that here. I don't think they even had candy in where he grew up.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
No candy and white supremacy? This is the worst.
It is. No, it really is. It's the worst. Honestly, he deserved it. But Israel Keyes was born on January 7th, 1978 in Richmond, Utah, as the second of 10 children and was raised by Heidi Keyes and John Jeffrey Jeff Keyes. His parents were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the LDS Church from Torrance, California. His father had even served as an LDS missionary in Germany. Until 1983, Keyes and his siblings were homeschooled, which, I mean, really will make a lot of sense as we get into their background a little bit more. But however, after leaving the LDS Church, Keyes' father relocated the family to a remote plot of land situated north of Colville, Washington, in Stevens County, which is like dummy remote. Like when we say remote, it is like super isolated.
Jeez, got to look it up on a map.
Yeah. This move isolated the family from society, and they resided in a one-bedroom cabin without electricity or running water on Rocky Creek Road.
Rocky Creek Road.
During their time...
Come on down Rocky Creek Road.
Oh, no. You don't want to go to Rocky Creek Road. I don't want to go near any of this. Maybe now because...
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm like, I would kind of want to see where he grew up.
Well, I don't think we'd want to go there because people still live out there and they're equally as insane as this.
Oh, yeah. I bet.
But yeah, during their time in Colville, the family attended services at a church called the Ark, which is like the cultiest name for a church ever.
That is the cultiest name. The Ark.
The Ark. Notably...
Come aboard.
Stop.
That's their thing.
Oh my God.
I bet that's their thing.
Probably. No, probably. They're like 2 by 2. So dumb. Anyways.
Does the preacher call himself the captain?
No, he calls himself Noah, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Every preacher has to be named Noah.
Wow.
We're going off on a tangent. So yeah, it's called the Ark.
They probably think that. They probably named it the Ark because they believe that they're going to be the last ones.
Probably.
Right?
That's how they all think.
Like they're the special and they're the chosen people.
Just like the Church of Davidians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, they're kind of in that same vein, but if anything,
Waiting for their horn.
Waiting for their horn.
If you're in a cult listening to this, there it is.
There it is.
That's about the only horn you're going to
Probably. But so notably, the Ark subscribed to white supremacist Christian identity ideology. And Keyes later described the Ark as having an Amish-like environment.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I like the Amish, though.
Yeah, but they were not the
but
Amish.
it's not the Amish.
They
Okay.
were not
Got
the
it.
Amish. They were kind of trying to live in that same very primitive lifestyle, but with very extreme beliefs.
The Amish sell me whoopie pies.
They do sell you whoopie pies, and they're very good. Yeah, and they make really cool furniture.
Yeah, they do. They do make great furniture,
but not the Ark. So.
I'd be a really good Amish person because I build things and I like cooking and stuff. But until the new iPhone drops, and then I'm like, no, can't do it.
I don't think you could. I don't think you could live.
I gotta get the new M4 Pro.
Yeah, you're way too techie, and you're also way more forward thinking. Than that. But
it's true.
So during this period of attending the Ark, the Keyes family befriended the neighboring family of Chevy Kehoe.
Chevy Kehoe.
Isn't that the most like character name ever? Like Chevy Kehoe.
Chevy Kehoe.
Who was later convicted for a 1996 triple murder.
What the? What? Chevy?
Really?
No. You gotta read about that too.
I know we do. No, we really do. The family attended another church in Colville called the Christian Israel Covenant Church that taught British Israelism as doctrine, which I've never even heard of that.
I've never heard of that in my life.
Apparently they have, and they follow that. That was basically abominable and deviant, and that Anglo-Saxons were to rule over the perceived inferior races.
Oh my Lord. Yeah.
This was apparently from the doc we were watching, the Murders in the Wild or whatever it was
Wild
called.
Crime.
That's what it is. They were essentially alluding that oftentimes there were skinheads and KKK members who were frequenting this area, and I'm assuming it was probably a part of this church that was, because that seems to align with what they were feeling at the time.
White supremacists in a place like Washington is kind of weird to me because like it's such a beautiful place and then you have such ugly people and there's such a juxtaposition when you look at it.
Right.
It's just weird.
I think it makes a little bit of sense because these people want to live on the fringe.
No,
anyways,
I know exactly why they're there. Yeah. It's just a strange sight.
No, it is. It is strange.
Because it's such a beautiful place.
Honestly, seeing people who are like that in general is a strange sight. And they probably should stay out of sight.
Yeah. Because like when I think white supremacists, I'm thinking like, you know, somebody they're like a hate group out in the desert and it's ramshackle, they're firing their guns and stuff like that. But no,
what?
Anyway, let's talk about Israel Keyes.
Yeah, okay. So Keyes later alleged it had a militia-like sort of situation. They were very into, you know, anti-government, you know, military in their regard, which will be interesting for what Israel ends up doing. But they were constantly armed. They were constantly ready to, you know, fight if they had to in their little militia, which, is a whole different topic. But for years, some of the Keyes children were forced to sleep in a tent due to their cabin's small size and made to hunt their food, chop firewood, wood, and work on local farms to support the family.
Okay.
And as a hobby, Keyes hunted anything with a heartbeat.
Wow.
He freely admitted to skinning a deer alive to his peers at the church.
Oh my God.
So first sign he was going to be a serial killer, he was harming animals, which is a really common indicator that somebody is going to end up killing. There is.
You can skin a deer alive. You can kill somebody.
You've left this realm of.
You've left this realm. You weren't even in this realm.
Right. But as a result of his unusual behavior, Keyes was ostracized by other children who attended the Christian Israel Covenant Church. And one girl even recounted that Keyes' presence made her skin crawl.
Oh, yeah.
So he was already creepy from the jump. But
I can believe it.
Yeah, I mean, like, if somebody, like, bragged to me that they skinned a deer alive, I'd be like, you're psycho, get far away from me. Like, stay the furthest away from me as you humanly can.
It's true.
But Keyes had been aware since he was 14 that there were things he considered normal and acceptable that no one else seemed to think were normal or okay. This realization led him to become a loner. And people eventually discovered some of the things Keyes had done, including shooting at neighbors' houses with his BB gun.
Okay, I mean, that's normal kid stuff.
And starting fires in the woods.
That's normal kid stuff.
No, but those are also signs of it. Like, so sure,
killing the animals is the biggest.
it's the combination, Jay.
It's a combination. I know, and then he probably pissed the bed till he was like 15 or something.
Right, exactly. Because all of these do tend to be signs that a child is going to eventually turn into a killer.
Yeah,
but he also broke into houses with another youth who subsequently avoided Keyes after witnessing him shoot an animal. On one occasion, Keyes stole several guns from his neighbor's residence and was forced to apologize to his parents after they found the cache. So he was already starting to make caches in like his teenage years. And he also sold stolen guns to local adults, which I'm like, what is wrong with these people where they're like, oh, you just got to go see Israel Keyes, the 14-year-old, and he'll get you an AR. Good Lord.
Crazy.
But around this time,
when your local gun dealer's 14,
right?
Hashtag white supremacy.
Just casual things. But around this time, Keyes' parents provided shelter to personal friends, and in the presence of their son, daughter, and sister, Keyes tied a cat to a tree with a parachute cord and gored it with a .22 revolver. The cat then began circling the tree before crashing into it and vomiting.
So it gored it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was how it was
That's
described.
crazy.
Yeah, that was how it was described.
Sure.
And the way the cat was running was kind of described as like a tetherball.
Yeah.
When you hit the
well,
tether.
He's dying.
Exactly.
It's awful.
And so he was circling the tree before he crashed into it and began vomiting. And Keyes allegedly chuckled before noting that the boy, who later informed his father, had vomited in response to the incident.
Yeah, sicko. God, he's
sick.
sick.
So sick. Like
this dude's sick, y'all.
From the
Wait
jump.
till you hear what he does.
Yeah.
Yoicks.
So Keyes had an epiphany, realizing he was different from his peers who ran away from him. And upon this realization, he kept his increasingly antisocial behavior to himself. In addition, Keyes' mother began to notice some troubling signs, if we didn't already have a, tenfold of different signs. But she's starting to notice. And Keyes, during this period, when he started tuning into various radio stations and different things. So the radio apparently gave the dead giveaway. The skin deer or the deer skinning, that's fine, but it was the radio. By his teenage years, Keyes had become a skilled carpenter, building his first wooden cabin for his family at the age of 16. He also worked for a Colville contractor from 1995 to 1997. And around this time, Keyes kept a journal including biblical quotations documenting daily sins for which he felt shame, such as lusting after his girlfriend, which was not allowed.
That was not allowed?
No, you could not lust before marriage. That was a sin, which is problematic. Yeah. But later, the family relocated to Smyrna, Maine, where
of course they did.
I know, where they collected sap.
Such a pure state.
I know.
They have to tarnish
Bring
that.
Where they collected sap for maple syrup production in mostly Amish communities.
Leave my Amish alone.
Right.
Leave them alone.
Due to their mother's religious zeal, the Keyes children were forced to hide from their parents to watch movies with friends and were forbidden to learn musical instruments. Sometime during this period, Keyes renounced his Christian faith, and Keyes declared his atheism to his parents, both of whom he had previously made tireless and constant efforts to please after an intense argument. This led them to evict Keyes for blasphemy, and they then instructed his younger siblings who looked up to Keyes to never have contact with him again.
Wow.
Keyes then became interested in Satanism and planned to commit a ritualistic murder.
Fun.
So we're going to go into more of, some of his background, but we're going to be following a timeline. The way I kind of built this timeline was based off of the FBI's timeline of what they think the events were.
Cool.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Is it similar to the timeline in Wild Crime, or is there a little bit of difference?
It's a little bit different because they went a little bit out of order.
That's fun.
So This timeline presents the information provided by Keyes and what law enforcement is aware of Keyes' criminal activities. It also includes travel dates and locations investigators suspect Keyes may have committed a homicide.
Okay.
So we're going to start with the summer of 1997 and the summer of 1998, which is the Deschutes River assault.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So in either one of those summers, because it's not fully clear whether it was one of those, but in the summer of 1997 or 1998, Keyes sexually assaulted a teenage girl while she and her friends were tubing down the Deschutes River in Maupin, Oregon. He admitted to stalking her from a tree line before violently sexually assaulting her, whom he estimated to be between 14 and 18 years old at knife point. As initially intending to murder her as part of a satanic ritual, he let her go in the river tube he had abducted her from.
Why?
So Keyes claimed that he abducted the female in the late afternoon or early evening while she and her friends were tubing on this river. However, investigators do not believe that this sexual assault was reported to law enforcement. I think it was because he wasn't fully prepared. Yeah,
that sounds about right. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like this is the type of person that goes in with a plan and executes.
Yeah.
But he might have been like little like a prepubescent serial killer, not just full blown yet.
Well, and I think that's correct because they're assuming this might have been one of his first crimes.
Yeah.
And he might have gotten there, did the sexual assault, and then he was like, I don't have the tools necessary to kill this girl properly.
We also don't know what the conversation was like. He could have been like, are you a virgin? And she's like, no. And then he's like, ugh.
You're not going to work.
Not going to work. Bye.
Yeah, because it was also because it was a part of a satanic ritual.
Yeah, that's why I said that.
It might have had to be certain criteria. But yeah, he was. When you watch his interviews with the investigators, he's very proud of all these things.
Yeah.
And so
he
specifically would say, I think I'm going to keep that one close to the chest, or like, I'm going to keep that one for myself.
Yeah.
And I think he specifically left out certain details that were satisfying to himself. But,
sometimes I want to sometimes I'm really interested in like, oh man, I wish I could interview this serial killer, talk to this serial killer just to try to understand what's going through this person's mind. This was the first one that I saw like being interviewed by police where I felt horrible for the police to have to sit in there with this dude. He was so arrogant and
extremely
just a jerk face, and his fucking laugh, y'all. I mean,
it's awful.
Horrid.
It's just terrible.
Horrid.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So it's he's not a pleasant person to listen to in general. But
he's just like, he just shouldn't be here. He shouldn't be on this earth. Anyway, let's keep it moving.
So Keyes relocated to New York and enlisted in the United States Army, serving as a specialist in the Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Infantry, 25th Infantry Division, which is a mouthful, but that was what he was a part of. He underwent a month-long preliminary course for United States Army Rangers training. Keyes was stationed at Fort Lewis and Fort Hood, with some time spent abroad during his time in Sinai, Egypt. He befriended several soldiers and made a threatening statement to one of them saying, I would like to kill you.
Okay.
Like, I just don't even know how you would bring that up in a conversation to your coworker.
Maybe that he's trying to threaten them.
Maybe, but it's like
maybe he's trying to get a rise out of them.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah,
I would like to kill you.
I would like to kill you. But while stationed at Fort Lewis, Keyes served as a mortar team on a mortar team.
Okay.
And former Army friends of Keyes have described him as a quiet and reserved individual who preferred to keep to himself. On weekends, he was known to drink heavily, consuming entire bottles of his favorite drink, which was Wild Turkey Bourbon.
Oh, wow. That's my papa's favorite.
Yeah. I think that was a pretty common, especially in the early 2000s and the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
It still is popular. But in February 2001, Keyes was arrested in Thurston County for driving under the influence. As a result of a plea agreement, he was only fined $350.
More like Thirsty County.
Right. Keyes was also a fan of the hip hop duo Insane Clown Posse,
Well, of fucking course he was.
which honestly makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, so much sense, dude.
Yeah. And displayed posters of the musical acts in the barracks. He received an Army Achievement Medal for his service as a gunner and assistant gunner from December 1998 to July 2001. And then in July I know you're just picturing it.
I can't get over the what do they call them?
The juggalos.
Juggalo.
Yeah.
Now I'm sure we might have juggalo listeners, and we're not trying to offend you. It's just from what we've heard, they're very chaotic.
Yeah, it's just chaotic.
So it's just kind of a funny thing, anyway.
Exactly.
Let's keep moving.
And it's also I wanted from what I have seen of the nature of the fans of Insane Clown Posse, it's a very fuck the system sort of deal. So it makes sense he would lean into that vibe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he was honorably discharged and relocated to...
That's surprising.
I
They
know.
never usually are.
They never usually are. But I think he was so good at being a chameleon because so many people were like, yeah, he was weird, but like we didn't suspect. You know what I mean? But he relocated to Nia Bay, Washington, which is a Native American reservation. And you're probably wondering, how the hell did he get on that?
Yeah.
Well, he lived there in the Maka Reservation community on the Olympic Peninsula with his Native American girlfriend. How he got a girlfriend, absolutely beyond me. But nonetheless, he had
With that
one.
laugh, yo.
Exactly. It is, yeah, you're going to have to like find a clip of...
I can't even do it.
Yeah, you're going to have to find a clip because that's something people actually remember about him. It's like, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But yeah, you'll have to insert a clip for people to hear or something. But yeah, so he had a Native American girlfriend whom he had met online and subsequently had a daughter with. Yes, this man procreated, and I really...
They always do, and I hate it.
I know, and I really hope his daughter is doing okay, you know? Like, because it's just brutal. But in 2007, Keyes had started a construction business in Alaska called Keyes Construction, while simultaneously working as a handyman, contractor, and construction worker. He also had ties to New York, where he owned 10 acres and a dilapidated cabin in the town of Constable. He specifically frequented campgrounds and isolated locations. Keyes claimed to only use guns when necessary and preferred strangulation. It's more intimate for him, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
That's what they always say, which he derived pleasure from witnessing victims lose consciousness during the struggle. He also... This is an interesting note because he mentioned this in his interviews with investigators. He claimed that he did not kill children or the parents of children, primarily because of his daughter, whom he feared discovering his crimes and the impact they had on his life. And a part of me feels like that's BS.
Yeah.
Like, especially before he had his daughter. Because the way he described it when we were watching his interviews was essentially he was like having my daughter change things for me. And I just like, I can't hurt a kid now, which I'm like, I'm glad you have some level of boundary, I guess, but it's...
I call BS.
Right. Like it doesn't
BS.
feel genuine.
No, nothing's genuine with this man.
Yeah.
Like nothing's genuine. Like it's hard to even call him a man after knowing what he's done. You know?
Right.
Yeah. There's nothing genuine. Like you can't trust a single word he says.
Exactly. And however, police and FBI investigators were skeptical of his claims and suspected that he had actually killed several teenagers and children, which is exactly why I was saying, like, before he had his daughter, I don't feel like that's accurate.
Nah.
But Keyes did not admit to any murders during his 3 years in the United States Army, but he did confess to attempting to rape a sex worker while on leave in Egypt and a college student he had met while on leave in Israel. So he did... harm young young women as well. So, but moving on to July 2001 to October 2001, Keyes, who resided in Nia Bay, Washington, committed his first homicide. And the identity and location of the victim remain unknown.
Well, of course.
And that'll make a little bit more sense when we get towards the end of things. Because again, like we were saying before, is during his interviews, he would specifically withhold information from investigators. Like he would tell them like, yeah, I did something, but he wouldn't want to give them all the like gritty details because it was like a part of his sexual experience to have that information, you know, because his crimes were very sex motivated.
Okay.
Every single one of them was very sex motivated.
Yeah.
But in July 2001 to 2005, Keyes confessed to murdering an unidentified couple in Washington. So it wasn't just the couple in Vermont. He had killed another couple before that. He refused to disclose whether the couple was married or their relationship to each other. It is uncertain whether the victims were residents of Washington, tourists, or residents he abducted from a neighboring state and brought to Washington. Keyes did hint that the victims were buried near a valley, and he might have moved the victim's car to create a distance between where the vehicle was found and the crime scene.
Dang.
Very calculated.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And so in 2005 to 2006, in the summer and fall months, Keyes confessed to committing 2 separate murders. He used his boat to dispose of the bodies of these victims. Keyes mentioned that at least one of the bodies was dumped in Crescent Lake in Washington. And something worth mentioning of that is Crescent Lake gets to like 600 feet deep.
Yeah, that's
in the center.
That's a deep lake.
Yeah,
Yo.
He described it as it kind of creates a V shape in the center. And so that's why he picked it, because without further, information, it would be unreasonable for police to drag that entire lake because it is so big.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't give them specifics, like coordinates or anything like that.
Really
but
pretty lake.
It is very pretty. He used anchors to submerge the body, and he reported that it was submerged in more than 100 feet of water. Dang. And he said he wasn't too far off the shore because he claimed he was only like 30 to 60 feet off the shore. But he was like, that already gets you into like the 90 feet level. So it's probably around that general region. But Keyes also may have moved the victim's car to create that distance between where the vehicle was found and the crime scene.
So if you go to Crescent Lake, there is a body in it.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Holy shit.
And police don't know where it is. But if you are a diver and you go diving in Crescent Lake, what you're looking for is a body that was tied down with milk jugs that had cement in them. So if you come across anything like that, I don't know if any of you are diving in Crescent Lake, but if you are that type of person, that's what you would look for.
Dude, if I was a diver, I would do that.
Right.
Like, that's wild.
It is. But yeah, in March 1st, 2007 to March 9th, 2007, Keyes drove from Nia Bay, Washington to Anchorage, Alaska, where he lived until he was arrested. And during this time, he basically threatened his girlfriend and said, I want to move to Alaska. She did not want to move to Alaska. She was from Nia Bay at that point. And so he was like, well, I want to take our daughter with us. And somehow this man got full custody. I don't know how that's possible.
It must have been the woman.
Right.
Like the woman had the problems.
I get
it has to be.
How could you have worse problems than this man?
I know, but they didn't know
probably
about
didn't
it.
know.
No, that's what I'm saying. They didn't know about it, but they probably knew about her because it was probably normal problems.
Exactly.
Like maybe drug issues or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. They didn't know.
Yeah. And
it's pretty horrible, though.
It is. It's pretty horrible. And during his journey, he traveled along the Alaska-Canadian Highway, making stops in Cache Creek, British Columbia, Watson Lake, Yukon Territory, Destruction Bay, Yukon Territory, and Teslin, which is in Yukon Territory. Okay. So Keyes crossed the border into Alaska on March 9th, 2007. He spent a lot of time in Yukon Territory, though, in multiple locations. So I bet you anything he was doing something.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah. So then on Halloween of 2008 to November 5th, 2008, Keyes, after traveling to multiple states, including North Dakota and Arizona, flew to Seattle. And on Halloween, he rented a 2008 PT Cruiser in Seattle, which was kind of his thing. So he would oftentimes fly to a city, rent a car there, and then drive to where he actually wanted to be so that there wasn't necessarily a full track on him.
Sure.
But 2 days later, on November 2nd, 2008, he flew from Seattle to Boston. He returned to Seattle and flew back to Anchorage on November 5th, 2008. And law enforcement suspect that Keyes may have committed criminal acts during this trip and is requesting any information about his activities during that period. Because, as you'll hear at the end, it'll make sense why there are still ongoing investigations, what they're trying to fill in holes with. So if you lived in any of those areas during that time and you have information, go submit some tips. But
submit some tips.
On April 9th, 2009, Keyes confessed to abducting a female victim from a state on the eastern coast and transporting that person across multiple state lines into New York. And they're assuming...
He makes it so difficult for investigators.
He makes it so
like, he's going to rank
difficult.
so high on that, dude.
It is unbelievable. And that was the thing. He really liked New England because of how many state lines you can very quickly get through.
Yeah.
The victim is buried in upstate New York, and investigators do not believe this victim is buried on the property Keyes owned in Constable, New York.
Yeah.
On April 10th, so the next day, in 2009, Keyes robbed Community Bank in Tupper Lake, New York. After the robbery, he parked in a nearby campground outside the area to wait for the emergency response vehicles to arrive. Mm-hmm. And he sat in that campground for several hours.
It impresses me the details of the timelines you're able to create, Madison.
Yeah.
No, seriously, this is like so impressive.
Thank you. I try.
Like, this is, you're painting like a full picture for me and the viewers.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's like she does all this work and I just show up and I'm like, read to me about murder.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. But that's okay. You're good at that.
Yeah.
You're good at listening. But July 9th, 2010 to July 12th, 2010, Keyes, after flying from Anchorage to Sacramento, California, drove to Auburn, California. And during this 3-day trip, he rented a black Ford Focus and covered approximately...
He's into the Ford Focus.
He loved it. I think because that's the cheapest...
He's like, let me get that Ford Focus.
No, so I think it's because those are the cheapest cars you can get from a rental company.
Yeah,
it's
probably.
like those mid-sized sedans, you know?
Yeah. No,
So
absolutely.
I wouldn't imagine he was like...
Maybe serial killers just love the Focus.
They just love a Focus.
My brother owned the Focus. I got to confront him now.
Yeah. Oh, God, no. He's not a serial killer.
No, he's not.
But... And he covered in that 3-day span approximately 280 miles. And law enforcement suspects that Keyes may have been involved in criminal activities during that journey and is also requesting information about his activities during that time. So April and May of 2011, Keyes, who had staked out at a park near Point Warrenzoff in Anchorage, Alaska, intended to shoot a couple sitting in a car. However... His plans were thwarted when a police officer pulled into the parking lot.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in a moment of panic, Keyes turned his attention to the officer and nearly shot him.
So, like, did he shoot at him or just was like...
No, he contemplated killing him.
He contemplated killing the police officer.
Yeah. Fortunately, a second police officer arrived and managed...
Damn.
I know.
All right.
And managed to defuse the situation, preventing Keyes from harming either the officer or the couple.
Okay.
So, in May 2011, Keyes reported staking out the North Fork Trailhead in Eagle River, Alaska, with the intention of abducting someone. He had prepared a cache of which was a short distance up the road, which contained Drano and a shovel, which he intended to use to dispose of the body.
Man, he's crazy.
He is. However, Keyes denied taking a victim from this location. I highly doubt it. Now, the first big crime he did, which caught some media attention, but even still, when I was researching, there wasn't a ton.
It wasn't national?
No, it didn't.
Yeah, because they went missing. It wasn't the bodies.
Exactly.
Yeah, when they find the bodies, that's when it's a big deal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
that's not entirely true, but yeah, maybe for this one.
Right. So on June 8th, 2011, it was the murder of Bill and Lorraine Courier. And here's their photos, and we'll insert their photos for y'all.
Get the tissues ready, y'all. It's brutal.
It's pretty brutal. Now, Keyes, who had flown from Anchorage to Chicago on June 2nd, 2011, rented a car and drove to Essex, Vermont, which when the investigators were asking him about this crime, after he was initially arrested and he was giving all this information to them, they asked him why Essex, because they said it was very off the beaten path. And he said, that's exactly why I picked it, because it was off the beaten path.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm like, God, that's so creepy.
What are that's like a dumb, I'm not gonna say that's a dumb question.
Yeah.
Because it's so far from him. You could have picked a smaller town near him, but at the same time, it's like, why do you think Essex?
Right. And also it was interesting because of the fact that the neighborhood where Bill and Lorraine lived was just a pretty standard, safe suburb in Essex. They lived in a decent sized, nice house. Like they had decent jobs and things like that. They were just very average people, which I think is what jarred a lot of people because it didn't seem like the type of couple who would be a target for a serial killer necessarily.
No, they don't look like they'd be a target at all.
Yeah. Like they look.
He has gone out of his way. There's one thing that's conclusive. He has gone out of his way to not get caught.
Right.
Like especially with this one. This couple, I'm not talking shit or anything. They're not the most attractive couple. Like it's not like wow, you know what I mean? Like this is a very average looking couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like they were just normal people.
Yeah,
like, that
normal
was it.
people.
Yeah. And so on June 8th, 2011, he confessed to abducting and murdering Bill and Lorraine Currier, a 55-year-old man, and his 49-year-old wife. And that night, Keyes broke into their home by busting through a glass door in their garage, tied them up, and particularly with zip ties, which I think is kind of dumb in my opinion because people, like these killers love zip tying people, but they don't comprehend that it's actually not that difficult to break out of a zip tie if you do it correctly. But so he tied them up and drove them to an abandoned farmhouse. So he put Bill down in the basement area, and Bill eventually busted out of his zip ties. And to subdue him, there was a shovel in the basement because this farmhouse was dilapidated. And so he had spent like multiple days preparing this house for the crimes he was going to be committing.
Wow, really?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And so there was a shovel down there, and since Bill was trying to attack, Keyes, he took the shovel, beat him on the head, knocked him out for a little bit. And then he went back upstairs to sexually assault and rape Lorraine multiple times. And so eventually he strangled Lorraine, killing her. And then he went back downstairs and he shot Bill. And so...
Wow.
Yeah. And their bodies were left in trash bags. And so he brought Lorraine's body down to the basement, put them in a pile over in the corner in the basement, and covered them with debris, like trash and things like that, to make it kind of look like, just whatever people, whoever owned the house before, just left like all the trash when they were getting it prepared, to move out.
This dude's brutal.
Yeah.
This dude is brutal.
And so what he didn't know is eventually, but it ended up really working out for him in a grand scheme of things, the house was going to be demolished. And the crew was completely unaware of the remains.
Yeah, but don't I remember in Wild Crime, they were like, we saw some trash. Oh, okay, here we go.
I was about to tell you.
My bad.
Okay, so
shut up.
So the crew ended up reporting a smell that smells of death during the demolition, but they all wrote it off as just being a dead animal because that's very common apparently in demolitions. Like animals get in there and then, die because they can't get out and stuff. So,
I mean,
I personally would have looked further into it.
I would have looked further into it. Like trash bags that smell of death. Come on. Yeah. Like that's like murder 101.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry. Even if it is animals, it's like at least it's you can clear your conscience and know that like it's just corpses of animals.
Exactly. Yeah, and so they demolished the house with the remains still in them, and so they went on years without knowing that those remains were there.
It's like, that's not my job.
Right. That is
it's the epitome of not my job.
Exactly. And the remains would eventually, though, partially be rediscovered when the FBI's investigation would have the area excavated. And so 2 years prior, though, Keyes revealed that he had concealed a murder kit near the Currier home, which he later retrieved and utilized during that crime. And subsequently, after the murders, he relocated most of the kit's contents to a new hiding location in Parrishville, New York, where they remained until his apprehension. Keyes disposed of a stolen weapon and the firearm he employed to fatally shoot Bill Currier in the Blakes River Falls Reservoir. And these weapons and a nearby cache were subsequently recovered by the FBI. And following the murder, Keyes embarked on a journey along the eastern coast before returning to Chicago.
He did not kill everywhere he went.
No.
He committed crimes, brazen crimes, but he did not kill everywhere he went because I think that he was more calculated than that. I think that he knew he had to hold himself back to not get caught, to continue killing. And I also think that he looked at the lives that he took as prizes, as a lot of serial killers do. But I think that he respected the action of it. And I think that he honored that more than other serial killers. He honored the kill more than other serial killers, and he kept them. They're his. You know what I mean?
So a part of me agrees with that, but he hid. We'll talk about where some of the caches are, and that'll be towards the end of things. I feel like he definitely though was prepared. Yeah. Or in the case of he's I have to kill someone.
But with Samuel Little, he could barely remember. He was I kill so many women, yo. There's so many, and he doesn't strike me as that serial killer. He remembers every single one, and probably has a little
journal or something.
Well, yeah, something like that, but more like a what's the word for an altar? Like just a mental altar for each victim.
Right. I mean, it's very possible.
Its own separate memories. Mm-hmm. Freak.
He is. But on June 15, 2011, Keyes flew from Chicago to San Francisco, making a one-night stopover before returning to Anchorage on June 16, 2011. Then he takes a little break. Mm-hmm. So...
Let it die down.
Yep. And then he...
Cooling off period, as I like to say.
Right. Exactly. And then he waited until February 1st, 2012 to commit the crime that really was the final nail in his coffin.
Yup.
And that was the abduction and murder of Samantha Koenig.
You thought the last one was brazen? Whew.
Yeah.
This one, yo.
This one's pretty bad.
Oh, my God.
So Samantha Tesla Koenig was an 18-year-old coffee booth employee in Anchorage, Alaska, and was abducted from her workplace on February 1st, 2012 at approximately 8:30 p.m. by Keyes. Now, Keyes, who had never met Koenig before that day, informed the police that he had only visited the shop because it was open late. That was why he picked that one. Now, he did come and, peruse 2 or 3 days before, so there was some premeditation there.
Oh, yeah.
But he didn't know who was going to be there. So
he did. I don't think he cared.
Yeah, he didn't care.
He just wanted a life.
Yeah. So, according to FBI Task Force Officer Jeff Bell, Keyes was unaware of who would be present when he arrived and assumed it would be a young girl, which is what he wanted.
Yeah.
And so, Samantha's boyfriend arrived to pick her up from work that night, but Samantha was nowhere to be found. So, the way it went down was Keyes approaches the drive-thru on foot, mind you, so already weird.
Weird.
But
weird.
He brandishes a gun at Samantha through that window, and she instinctively raises her hand and kind of backs up from the window. And all of this is caught on security camera footage too, which is how they know all of this. But he demanded that she turn off the lights and refrain from pressing the alert button beneath the counter, explaining that he was listening to his police scanner in his earbuds and would be able to detect any kind of police movement.
But it really was Insane Clown Posse.
Probably. No, probably. So then afterwards, after she turns off all the lights, he tells her to put on her jacket because he's so kind. He didn't want her to get chilly.
Well, it would look more like an abduction.
Yeah, I guess so.
If she didn't have a jacket on.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I was just making fun of him, but yeah, you're probably right. So anyways, Keyes jumps through the drive-through window, which all of the cops were like, that's crazy.
That's nuts.
Because that's
freaking nuts.
Like, that's a high up window because it's got to, accommodate big trucks and stuff. So
literally.
But yeah, so he jumps through the drive-through window and proceeds to zip tie Samantha's hands behind her back. They exit the coffee hut together, and he walks her to his car. And around 11 p.m., the boyfriend gets a text from Samantha that would allude she was upset with him and that she was going to stay with friends, but it didn't sound like her. And that's the thing. It's like people are like, well, how do you know it doesn't sound like your girlfriend if she's mad at you? I'm like, we all know how our like significant others talk.
Yeah.
And she was, yeah, I'm like, I totally believe that. And the reason why it didn't sound like her is because Samantha had left her phone on the counter in the coffee hut. So we'll talk a little bit more about what he did, but essentially he took her back to his house, put her in a shed, and was like, where's your phone? And she was like, oh, I forgot it at the coffee hut. He's got to go back and get the phone. And that's when he texts her boyfriend because he had been blowing up her phone.
Yeah.
And so he also had taken the debit card from her for her bank account and didn't remember to ask her for the PIN. So he had to go back again to get the PIN after the fact that he had to go to her car at her dad's house to get her debit card out of that car. So, like, it was just a mess for him that night. But, yeah. So, at around 3 a.m., that was when the boyfriend and Samantha's dad reported seeing a person in Samantha's truck that was parked outside of her dad's house, which would later be revealed to be Keys. So, Keys sexually assaulted her, stole her debit card, and carved her PIN number into her debit card so that he wouldn't forget it, which is like super strange. If I saw somebody who carved a PIN number into their debit card, I'm like, the hell you got going on?
Exactly.
You know? But he stole her debit card and other belongings and then murdered her the following day. Ironically, though, his girlfriend and young daughter were at home during this entire ordeal.
This dude takes risks.
Major risks. Major. But so here's the thing, is he disposed of her body in the shed where, you know, all of this had gone down in his backyard. And then he leaves for a pre-booked 2-week cruise with his family in the Gulf of Mexico. He heads to New Orleans to go on a cruise.
Wild.
And he leaves Samantha's dead body in a shed. And so, of course, the police were like, why would you do that? Why would you not dispose of her before you leave for this cruise? And he says, it was 21 degrees outside. I wasn't worried about it.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not smelling or anything. Just insane.
It's insane. So when he returns to Alaska after his cruise, he retrieved Koenig's body from the shed, applied makeup to her face because he felt like she didn't look pretty enough because she was rotting, and sewed her eyes open with fishing line. He also braided her hair and applied bondage to her to make it appear as though she were still alive. And he took a picture with a camera he had got from the thrift store. And he issued it to, he also took a photo of her with a 4-day-old issue of the Anchorage Daily News and posed it alongside her body.
Yeah.
And he sent it out with a ransom note. And so, and the weirdest thing was with the ransom note, he sends a message basically saying, if you want to like know where Samantha is, go to see Albert.
Yeah.
And it was like a photo of a pig or something like that. I remember it was at the park.
Oh, yeah.
There was like a photo of a pig named Albert or something in this park, this public park.
Yes.
And he had shoved the
photo and all in the Ziploc.
Yes, in the Ziploc underneath the photo, and because he said, "Go and see Albert, ain't she purty?" And because that was the inscription on Albert's photo. So creepy.
Sick.
Yeah.
Like sends his brutality rating up significantly just because he's able to go and do this.
Exactly.
You know, and make it look like she's alive just for money. I mean, unbelievable.
Exactly. And so with the ransom, he
Does
demanded...
this guy even have a conscience?
No. And after demanding the ransom, he wanted $30,000, some of which was deposited into Koenig's bank account, and Keys dismembered Koenig's body and disposed of it in Matanuska Lake, located north of Anchorage. And since the lake was frozen, he cut the ice to deceive authorities, pretending to be ice fishing.
Smart.
He even went as far to set up a typical ice fishing camp to make it look like because he had to make multiple trips.
He's smart.
Yeah.
This dude knows how to murder.
Ultimately, Keys made 3 trips to complete disposal of the remains.
Wow.
So that's why he had to have the tent, because people would be like, why is this guy coming in and out? But yeah. So her remains were recovered by the FBI's underwater search and evidence response team, or USERT. And after his arrest, Keyes confessed to this abduction and murder of Samantha Koenig in Anchorage, Alaska. Well, let's jump back a little bit just for February 2nd, 2012 to February 18th, 2012. So Keyes flew to New Orleans for the cruise with his family, where he embarked until February 11th. Afterwards, his girlfriend would fly back to Alaska, but he drove from New Orleans to Texas, saying that he was going to go take his daughter to see his mom. Despite his denials, investigators suspect that Keyes may have been involved in a homicide in Texas or a neighboring state during this period, because he drops off his daughter with his mom, but there was like almost 2 or 3 days, I want to say, where nobody had any contact with him. So it was very possible he could have been off doing something. But yeah, but he did, we do know, on February 16th, 2012, Keyes set fire on a house in Aledo, Texas, to distract officers from him committing the murder in Azle, Texas, which subsequently he robbed the National Bank of Texas in Azle. And he showed up to the bank robbery wearing a white hard hat with hair taped to it that made it look like he had long hair, because he had short hair at the time.
And it looked convincing.
It did look really convincing. And he says it was real hair, and family members of the victim believe it was the victim's hair, because the victim did have the same color hair, and it was long, curly like that.
He is a chameleon, man.
It's insane. So going into the investigation a bit more. So after Koenig's murder, Keyes demanded ransom money, and the police were able to trace withdrawals from her account. Investigators approached Samantha's father and requested that he deposit $5,000 into her account to, attract, like, as bait, basically, for him. And a few hours later, it worked, because a man made an ATM withdrawal using Samantha's card. Yep. However, because they had set up an alert with the bank to anytime Samantha's card was used, they would get a notification. But however, the police arrived at the bank only to find that the man had already left by the time they got there. So a week later, another ATM withdrawal was made, but this time it was in Wilcox, Arizona, which was 4,000 miles away.
Wow.
Yeah.
4,000?
4,000
That's
miles.
incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord.
And a short time later, they have a report of a suspect in Lordsburg, New Mexico, then Humble, Texas, and then finally in Shepherd, Texas. So they were able to kind of track him.
Sure.
And authorities noticed that the suspect was moving along the I-10 corridor.
Now, I don't know if y'all know this, but if you commit a crime, the very state you do not step foot in
is Texas.
Is Texas, because they're going to fucking find your ass.
They really will.
They're good at it.
They really will.
And then they'll execute you.
Exactly. However, the suspect had made a crucial mistake during the ATM withdrawal in Arizona. A white Ford Focus could be seen in the background. Now, of course, that is a very common car, but somehow on March 13th, a state trooper noticed a vehicle matching that description in a Texas hotel parking lot.
By the grace of God.
Yes. And so, and that was because the state of Alaska had put out a BOLO basically to all of these states that had the I-10 corridor going through them.
Sure.
So, yeah. So he started driving. So
I'm just saying, that's good police work.
It's really good police work.
Really good police work.
But yeah, so Keyes started driving away, and the trooper followed him.
Yeah.
And once the vehicle exceeded the speed limit, I think he was going like 58 and a 55.
55?
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous.
And he was like, that's enough.
That's enough. It's speeding.
So the trooper had probable cause to pull it over. And when the trooper asked the driver for identification, the suspect ultimately presented him with an identification card for Israel Keyes. So Israel, and mind you, all of this time, they had no idea who they were looking for.
Yeah.
Because he wore masks and he wore disguises at every single crime scene.
Yeah.
So they had no idea. But Israel Keyes was a name that was completely unknown to officials, but was apprehended by the Texas Highway Patrol and Texas Rangers. Their instincts proved to be spot on, as a search of the car revealed Samantha's identification, debit card, cell phone, and a gun.
Wild.
Yeah. Additionally, a disguise that matched the man in the ATM photos was found.
I wonder why he kept her ID and stuff with him.
It was probably a souvenir.
Yeah, but this guy is not that type.
I don't know then.
He's
That's
just
the
not
only
that
thing
type.
I would think of.
I mean, not the type to not keep a souvenir. He puts a souvenir buried somewhere where no one will find it. Like that is that type of guy. Why the hell would he keep it in the trunk of the car?
Unless it was for a later ritual where he has to have a piece of the victim or something. I don't know.
Weird.
But yeah,
Weird.
so on March 13th, 2012, Keyes was arrested in the parking lot of the Cotton Patch Cafe in Lufkin.
Oh, it sounds cute.
I know it does. In Lufkin, Texas, by Corporal Brian Henry and the Texas Ranger Stephen Rayburn.
Next time we're in Lufkin, we're gonna visit.
Yeah, we will. So investigators had circulated a lookout bulletin for the suspect's car, which had been used at ATMs to withdraw money from Koenig's account. The officer stopped Keyes after he drove slightly over the speed limit. And when they were searching the vehicle after they noticed, when they were noticing cash that was stained with bright ink, which indicated a die pack from the bank. And that was from the bank robbery. So Koenig's ATM card and cell phone were, like we said already, discovered in Keyes' car. So Keyes was subsequently extradited back to Alaska, where he confessed to the Koenig murder. So Rich Kurtner, the federal public defender for Alaska, represented Keyes, and he was indicted, and his trial was scheduled to commence in March 2013. During his incarceration, Keyes spoke to investigators multiple times over a period of months. He expressed his willingness to cooperate because he desired the death penalty, which is not legal. Is not a legal option in the state of Alaska. But they weren't going to tell him that.
Which is so surprising.
Yeah, right.
It's like Alaska is definitely a place that you would think that they would execute people. They haven't done it in like decades.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it hasn't been legal in decades.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And so, but they weren't going to tell him that because obviously he lacked some element of research here. Because also it's not legal in Vermont, right? Because we looked it up.
It's not legal in Vermont. It's not legal in Vermont. Yeah, the only people that really, I mean, the only state that really execute people are Missouri, Texas, and South Carolina nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. So initially, he cooperated to some extent, confessing to certain crimes. And
Alabama.
Yeah, Alabama does too.
Cannot leave Alabama out.
But yeah, so he was confessing to certain crimes and expressing a desire to be executed within a year. He stated that he had set specific goals for himself, and the murders aligned with accomplishing those objectives. Additionally, he admitted to police that he had sexual fantasies about meticulously planning and executing murders. So, FBI Special Agent Jolene Godin described Keyes' mindset, stating, Keyes definitely talked about the hunt. He described how the urge would come over him, then he would plan a trip and a homicide would happen. It was a hunt for him, a hunt that was for that perfect situation.
Yeah.
Keyes initially sought to avoid publicity to protect his younger daughter from negative attention. However, his cooperation significantly diminished after his identity was revealed in the media. He was like, oh, well, I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm like, shut up. You're already in jail. But despite being on trial for the murder of Koenig, the trial was delayed, and during this period, Keyes left behind an intriguing clue. He had sketched a series of 11 skulls drawn in his own blood. How he got the blood,
crazy.
Nobody is aware of.
He's a nutcase.
He's insane. A lot of people think that, like, a lot of the officers think that he punched himself in the face and made his nose bleed. And that's how he drew it. But yeah, it's 11 skulls. They each have an upside down cross on their forehead. And then on the 12th image, it's a photo of Baphomet.
It's actually a pretty good photo of Baphomet.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Like the skulls are pretty lame, but Baphomet, it looks pretty much like he really got the horns down.
And he also included on one of them, which is "We Are One."
We are one.
Yeah, which is so creepy.
No, it's. I think what he means by that is like all of those lives that he took are his.
Yeah.
Like I said before, I'm telling you, I think that's what he really cares about the lives that he took. Not about the people, but he cares that he has them.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They are trophies.
So, this discovery led law enforcement authorities to speculate that Keyes might be documenting the number of victims he had killed, because he did at one point tell officers in an interview that the number of victims is under 12. So I'm like, okay, 11.
You can't. My thing is though, I take that with a grain of salt because this dude lies for a living.
Yeah. And then on Wednesday, May 23rd, 2012, during a routine hearing, Keyes attempted to escape. He used wood shavings from a pencil to pick his cuffs. And however, U.S. Marshals intervened and subdued him using a taser.
I thought he broke the chain.
That's how they said it. That's not how I read it. Is that what I read?
That's conflicting.
Yeah.
It's like directly conflicting because they said on the TV show that there was a loose chain that he's been working on, like a loose link in the chain that he's been working on, trying to loosen it up more and more, and finally was able to bust out of it.
Yeah.
But damn.
Yeah. What I because they made it seem like he connected the extra that he connected something because of that broken chain to give him a wider gap between his legs, and he was able to bust through that way. I caught, and what I read in different articles was that he used wood shavings from a pencil, like he had shaved out a pencil, which makes
either way it's impressive.
It is. It's very impressive. But yeah, so while incarcerated at the Anchorage Correctional Complex, Keyes managed to conceal a razor blade in his cell. Essentially, he had requested a razor blade so that he could shave. And when you're in prison, you're not allowed to keep those. You have to turn them back in after you're done using them. But what he did is he popped out the razor blades from the actual razor and replaced it with like aluminum gum wrapper or whatever.
Yeah, it was, and that was also remarkably impressive.
Yeah, and he replaced it, and so essentially he was able to keep the razors that way. And the circumstances surrounding his acquisition of the blade remain unclear. And that's just what they are assuming happened. He was under security restrictions prohibiting the use of an electric razor. So Keyes succumbed to suicide on December 2nd, 2012 by cutting his wrists and attempting strangulation.
Yup.
And on his suicide note that was discovered beneath his body, it was titled An Ode to Murder, but provided no information about potential victims. In 2020, the FBI released drawings of the 11 skulls and a pentagram, which we'll put in the photo of. And so essentially, it was meticulously crafted in blood and found underneath Keyes' bed after his passing. And one of the drawings featured the phrase, "We are one," written at the bottom. The FBI believe the number of skulls found correlates with the total number of victims. And a big question people always seem to ask with these killers is, did Keyes draw inspiration from any other famous serial killers?
Hell yeah, he did.
Well, so he confessed to having a fascination with Ted Bundy, who, if you're not familiar somehow, it was a serial killer who committed crimes in various locations across the country of the United States. However, Bundy's victims were specifically young white women with long straight hair parted down the middle.
Yeah.
And this guy had no type specifically. He also mentioned that he gained valuable insights by reading books written by criminal profilers in the Bureau, which I think really aided in his ability to stay out of the law's eyes.
Yeah.
And as a teenager, he read John Douglas's Mindhunter, which made him realize that he wasn't alone in his thoughts and experiences. Additionally, he read Dark Dreams by Roy Hazelwood, a book that delved into the minds of lust-driven serial killers. He took detailed notes from this book. Now, we're going to kind of talk about the suspected homicides. These are all ones that the FBI think he's associated with. So, but obviously he didn't ever fully disclose that he did these. But the first one is Julie Marie Harris, who was a 13-year-old Special Olympics medalist in skiing. And she tragically vanished on March 2nd, 1996, while waiting for a ride to a local church in Colville, Washington. She was a double amputee.
Okay.
And she was
waiting. I remember her from the documentary.
Yeah, she was waiting on her porch for some church people to pick her up. And all of a sudden, she wasn't there because when the church people showed up, she wasn't on the porch. Her remains were discovered on April 26, 1997, in a wooded area approximately a few miles away. The cause of her death remains unknown. Harris, a double amputee, had her prosthetic feet found a month after her disappearance in the Colville River. And so this was all at the time when he was still living in Colville, which is why they think he might have been associated with it. But who knows? It might have been that other guy who was his neighbor in Colville, remember? Who was the triple murderer. But
it
yes.
could have been him, but
yeah.
I don't know. This seems very...
It feels accurate.
It feels very Israel.
Yeah, it does. And in 2012, Keyes, who was then 18, who had previously lived in the area, was questioned about Harris's case after his arrest. So he was 18 at the time when this would have happened. That they talked to him about it in 2012. And so, however, he neither confirmed nor denied any involvement in her murder. And on June 27, 1997, Cassandra Cassie Emerson, another young girl from Colville, was reported missing. Tragically, Cassie's mother, Marlene K. Emerson, was found dead in their burned-out trailer home. 13 miles from her home, Cassie's remains were discovered in 1998.
Wow.
Keyes confessed to investigators that his first act of arson was with a trailer in Colville. He also admitted to killing 5 people in Washington state and was the subject of an ongoing investigation by the state police and the FBI.
Yeah.
I think he did all of those.
Oh, yeah, I think he did that too.
But yeah, Keyes claimed to have either buried or submerged a victim in a lake in Nia Bay, Washington, between July and October 2001. And a body was discovered, but the death was ruled accidental. Okay. So Keyes also confessed to the double homicide of a young couple that occurred between 2001 and 2005. According to Keyes, he beat the man to death and strangled the woman, and he buried both of them. Between 2005 and 2006, Keyes claimed to have killed 2 more victims separately. One of the victims was apparently dumped in Lake Crescent, Washington. Keyes did not have a felony criminal record in Washington, although he had been stopped for 2 occasions for minor driving-related offenses. Authorities reviewed unsolved murder and missing persons cases to determine if any of them may have been a part of the work of Keyes. In 2012, authorities identified a possible victim known only as Lewis County Jane Doe. On April 7th, 2011, she was found in Peterman Hill area of Morton, Washington, by a passing motorist. In 2022, her identity was finally revealed, but her name has not been disclosed to the public. Keyes is also a suspect in a series of crimes committed by the Boca Killer in 2007. The Boca Killer was responsible for 3 known crimes associated with the town center at Boca Raton in Boca Raton, Florida. And the first case in the murder series involved Randy Ann Mallitz Gorenberg, a 52-year-old woman. On March 23, 2007, she was abducted from the Boca Town Center Mall parking lot. Within an hour, her body, which had 2 fatal bullet wounds, was dumped at a different location. And the second crime was of kidnapping of an identified woman and her toddler son from the same shopping mall parking lot on August 7, 2007. Although the kidnapper wore a mask and sunglasses, the victim caught glimpses of his face and described him as a tall, athletic man with long hair, which generally matched Keyes' description. This woman was released unharmed after the assailant forced her to withdraw cash from the automated teller machine. The third Boca case involved the tragic murders of Nancy Boccio, a 47-year-old woman, and her 7-year-old daughter, Joey Boccio Hauser, on December 12, 2007. Their vehicle was found fatally shot in the parking lot of the Boca Town Center Mall. Authorities believe that Keyes may have been involved in the murder of Deborah Feldman, a 48-year-old woman, after discovering that he had frequently searched for her missing persons case on his computer shortly before his arrest. Feldman was last seen at her apartment in Hackensack, New Jersey on April 8, 2009, and her body has never been recovered. During his interrogation, Keyes was shown Feldman's image, which caused him to hesitate and wait. He then expressed his reluctance to discuss her case further. It is suspected that Keyes buried her near Tupper Lake, New York. In addition to the Boca cases, Keyes is also a suspect in the murder of James Jimmy Lamar Tidwell Jr., which was the one that happened in Azle, Texas, that they're almost certain that he committed because of the
hair.
Well, the hair, but also it was because he admitted to the arson in the town over.
In the town over, yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
and he said it was, because he was trying to get police away from where he just murdered someone.
Exactly.
But James Tidwell Jr. was a 58-year-old electrician who disappeared in Mount Enterprise, Texas on February 15, 2012. Tidwell was last seen at 5:30 a.m. that day after finishing his night shift. During a bank robbery in Azle, Texas on February 16, 2012, the perpetrator, who is believed to be Keyes, wore a white hard hat similar to Tidwell's. Tidwell's hair also resembled a dark-haired wig that Keyes was wearing during the robbery. When interrogated, Keyes admitted that his wig was actually human hair, like we mentioned before. When asked where he had gotten the hair, he quipped, "You don't need to purchase real hair to obtain real hair." So, additional caches that they know of. Keyes confessed to burying a cache of money and guns near Green River, Wyoming.
Wyoming. Mm-hmm. I love Wyoming. I've never been, but I want to.
You would like to go. The known dates of travel to the Wyoming area are September 2007, July 2008, and September 2011. Additionally, Keyes admitted to burying a cache near Port Angeles, Washington, but the exact date is unknown.
They haven't found those.
No.
Okay.
And then some additional homicides. Keyes provided additional details about the abduction and murder of a female. The victim is described as having pale skin and possibly having a wealthy grandmother. She was also driving an older car at the time of her abduction.
Okay.
Keyes indicated that he committed only one murder in addition to Samantha Koenig, in which the body was recovered. In this homicide, he reported that he had something to the victim's he had done something to the victim's body or moved it to a location where it would appear as though the victim had died from an accident. As a result, the body was recovered and authorities ruled the death accidental, which I think is the lake one.
The lake one, yeah.
But Keyes traveled internationally, and it is unknown if he committed any homicides while outside of the United States. In addition to the specific dates mentioned below, which I have some dates of when he traveled internationally, it was worth noting that while residing in New York, Keyes was situated near the border with Canada and likely crossed into Canada on multiple occasions. He mentioned several trips to Montreal where he sought prostitutes. Furthermore, during his journey to Alaska in 2007, Keyes drove alone through Canada. Law enforcement is aware of the following dates of his international travel. And I won't bore you with the dates, but some of the countries that he went to was British Columbia, Belize, Canada when he drove to Alaska, and 2 different trips to Mexico.
Wow. All right. Well, Madison, you go ahead and get your rankings. It's time to rank.
All right.
Now, y'all put your ranking in the comments, and I will add it into the average. So we can kind of like have that final. But I'm giving him a 9 for brutality. The only reason why he doesn't get a 10 is because there was no long-term torture, like days and days and days. I think that there's no way to have a 10 without that type of like keeping somebody and torturing them for days. He definitely would torture them, but it was quickly after he would kill them, almost same day, sometime next day. Still, what he did, I mean, just in the way he went about it and the fact that he didn't care, just absolutely 100% brutal. I think a strong 9 bordering on a 10. Premeditation, I'm giving him a 9. The caches, I mean, that's so premeditated.
That's the most premeditated you could be.
You can't, yeah. It's the only reason why I'm not giving him 10 is because he would go after whoever came along. He chose places, not people.
Right.
That's kind of something that, the coffee shop, he chose the coffee shop, the house of the couple, he chose their house. Why did he say he chose their house? Because it was isolated or something.
No.
It was something.
It was because he could get in through that glass door in the garage.
Yeah. There's exactly. There were like specific reasons why he chose places for the ease of things. That's the only reason he gets a 9, or he would have got a 10. With the motive, I'm giving him a 9 again. His motive, obviously, his more shallower motive is sex, but I think his deeper motive is collecting lives. And difficulty of investigation, a 9 bordering on a 10, just because he didn't do it. Like, Zodiac is, in my mind, he's one of the only serial killers that could have a perfect 10 because he got away with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, think about how he did all this wild crime. He chose these places. Again, he was obsessed with the locations. He wasn't obsessed with the people, entirely, which I think really aided to his ability to kill. He's featured on Wild Crime, and it's not like necessarily he lives in the wild. He lived in Anchorage, right?
Yeah.
So he just chose wild places. And then body count, I'm giving him a 7, just because 11 is, I believe is probably 11. But 11 is a lot. But when you put it up against Gacy, Bundy, Green River, Samuel Little, especially, it's not worthy for anything higher than a 7, in my opinion.
I agree.
All right.
Yeah, we ranked him pretty similarly. I gave him a 9.5 for brutality.
You and your 0.5s.
I'm a 0.5er.
No.
Because I want to give him a 10, but
0.5.
I do. I like a 0.5.
All right.
It feels right.
Heard.
So for basically the same reasoning, I mean, I really gave him a 9 because of the fact that all of his crimes did involve some level of sexual assault. So these people who died, all of them died in some manner of severe fear and discomfort, and the fact that he was completely diminishing their, humiliating them in ways, and so I think that's one of the most brutal things that you can do. But of course, I don't think it was a perfect 10 because exactly like you said, he didn't drag them out. He was very impatient in the way he wasn't like Bundy, who kept the fun going, which I know is a disturbing way to describe it, but that was how he thought, is like after they died, he still was assaulting his victims.
Yes.
And that's a 10 in my opinion.
Yeah.
And premeditation, I gave him a 9 as well because of the caches. He was so premeditated, but I agree he was definitely more so oriented. He was like a spider who would set up its nest, and whatever came through it, he was like dope.
Yeah.
Like, because the fact that
honestly, I love that. That's exactly what he was.
Yeah, because he had no preference on age or gender or anything like that, which is honestly very odd.
They mentioned that he might be bisexual.
Yeah, they did. There wasn't any clear indication that he necessarily sexually assaulted his male victims as well, but they do think that that was a possibility. Yeah. But yeah, so it's like, but it is a bit odd. You don't often see these serial killers who have no preference, especially the sexual ones. They usually have some level of a preference. Yeah. So I did think that his premeditation was ranking very high. Motive, I gave him an 8.5 because yes, his motive was very obviously sex, but there was definitely, like, I agree to an extent, like your idea, like his other motive was money. Well, that was just how he funded what he did. Yeah. It wasn't because he necessarily got a thrill from that.
Exactly.
I think it was, we're never going to fully know what his full motive was because it could have been something to do with his Satanism. Or that honestly could have just been for attention. Who knows? But yeah, I don't feel like we'll fully know outside of the sex because of how, it was a very sex motivated sort of crime in general. I don't think we're going to know fully, but yeah, difficulty of investigation, I give him a 9.5 because I agree. I would give him a 10, but yeah, there are people who have never been caught.
Exactly.
So you can't give a perfect 10 in that. But he gave them a run for their money. That is for sure. And then body count, I also gave him a 7 for basically the same exact reason. So yeah.
All right. Well, that was a fun one.
Yeah. What was our final score?
Our final score is 8.65.
8.65.
Now, y'all give us your rankings in the comments, and we'll add that into the average. And yeah.
Yeah. I think that was a good episode, y'all.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
Great research, hon.
Thank you very much. Yeah, if there's a criminal or a certain crime act that you would like us to rank on this particular basis, go ahead and comment down below what you would like to hear us talk about. Because, like, of course, like I said in the last episode, I have a whole Rolodex of different criminals, serial killers, arsonists, all sorts of people that we can go into. But those are ones that I enjoy. Yeah. And so maybe there's one that y'all enjoy that I'm not thinking of. So let us know down below. And yes, like JT said, let us know what you are ranking this particular criminal. And you can either break it down into our 5 categories, or you can just give us the overall total. But with that, thank y'all so much for listening to today's episode. And my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm JT.
And don't forget, next time you're walking down the street, you might just be passing a perfect 10.